Beardo Benjo.
BPM, or bullets per minute, is a lot of things. A first-person shooter, a rhythm game, a roguelike with procedurally generated dungeon crawling, a slick yet smooth art style, and an infectious soundtrack. There is a huge amount to love here, and I for one felt immediately at home with its rhythm-based systems and fast, frenetic gameplay. As a massive fan of the newest installments in the Doom franchise, both 2016 and Eternal, the biggest compliment I can pay to BPM is that when all the systems come together in a glorious moment of chaos, it feels like something ripped directly from Doom's most intense combat scenarios. The premise here is simple. You play as a Valkyrie on a mission to Helheim, overthrowing and destroying all evil that stands in your way. But there's a catch. To overcome your foes, you need to shoot and reload in time with the music. You can perform both of these actions on the beat or off beat, but if you try to shoot or reload at any other time, you're met with a red marker and an unsuccessful outcome. You must push forward through 7 procedurally generated Norse dungeons, starting with Asgard each time, picking up upgrades, stat boosters, different weaponry and perks until you either make it to the end or fall in battle. Like all roguelike games, death means you start again with none of the boosts, stats or perks you collected on your previous run, so each attempt feels fresh and varied, with much of the fun coming from finding out which items and perks have the best synergies when paired together. The gameplay here is simple to pick up but hard to master. Those with years of Guitar Hero or Beat Saber experience should feel immediately comfortable with the timing caveat of the combat in BPM. I for one have spent years playing rhythm games, so although the mechanics felt alien at first, I quickly settled into a routine. My leg tapping along to the tempo of the music kept my shots and reloads in sync, and everything began to feel incredibly natural. Picking up new guns, however, is a risky move, as each piece of weaponry has its own reload mechanic. If you pick up the pistol, then a simple 2 clicks to change the clip and cock the gun is all that's needed to reload, but if you favour the revolver, then it's 1 click for each bullet you load into the chamber, and then 1 final click to snap the chamber into place, before you can start raining bullets down on your foes once again. Weighing up which feels the most comfortable for you personally will require much experimentation. The dungeons in BPM are also filled with totems and perks that should be sought out at all costs. Totems or altars require a sacrifice of a coin or key to upgrade your base stats, things like speed, damage, accuracy and luck. So clearing every possible room of enemies becomes crucial to maintaining your coin and seeking out these upgrade stations. There are also vendors whose rooms act as a place of refuge for the player to take stock, fix up their health, purchase a new gun, or equip a passive perk like health regeneration or the ability to shoot through walls. With so much to upgrade, find, equip and experiment with, I found myself scouring every single room of every single dungeon before ultimately moving onwards to face the boss room at the end. Something I often find myself doing in my other favourite roguelike games, The Binding of Isaac and Enter the Gungeon. Enemies in BPM come in all different shapes and sizes, from small bats that shoot you from range, to large spiders and squids, to more human-like creatures with shields and swords. The fodder for shooting on your journey is varied enough, but I found that apart from one enemy with a shield, none of these creatures really posed a huge threat. Movement is crucial in BPM. If you stop moving even for a second, then enemies will take advantage, but keep on your toes and master the dash mechanic, and these waves of drones will fall with ease. During my initial few runs with BPM, I lamented that the game was extremely hard and worried that I would not be able to complete a full run before putting together my review, but the longer I spent with the game, the easier it felt. Like all good roguelites, understanding the systems is crucial. Once you feel comfortable with the timings of the combat and the combination of consistent movement and dashing to safety, you'll be stringing together kills and feeling almost untouchable. Now that's not to say that BPM is an easy game. No, not at all. I'm sure there will be players who struggle with the pace of the combat and the timing of the actions. BPM is a fast-paced game, and at its most frantic of times it's easy to let your timing slip. A failed reload or shot can spell disaster, so a pair of headphones with the volume turned way up is the best way to experience the game if you want to feel completely immersed in its pacing and combat. If however you do find that the core game is a breeze, then great news. BPM comes paired with some super hard challenge modes and a higher difficulty mode for its standard dungeon crawling adventure. Challenge modes vary from a retro filter that highly pixelates everything, making it nigh on impossible to spot enemies, to a mode where you and everything in the dungeons not only shoots in time with the music, but also moves in time with the music, making the entire game look like an amateur attempt at stop motion animation. The harder difficulty campaign ratchets up the intensity by adding modifiers such as enemies dropping explosive skulls upon death that litter the dungeons you clear with traps that could spell your demise if you don't watch your step after clearing a room of enemies. Bosses also pose a higher challenge even on the default easy mode, as they employ a range of area of effect attacks that push the player to think about where they position themselves and not just about dealing damage as quickly as possible. I would be completely remiss if I didn't speak about the music in BPM. A rhythm game needs an incredible soundtrack if it wants to succeed, and the music here kept my head nodding and my leg tapping every time I returned to play another round. Its metal soundtrack with big riffs, soaring solos and incredibly melodic hooks has been running around in my head for days now, and playing the game at high volume it really helps to immerse you in the minute-to-minute combat when you're enjoying the music that accompanies everything you're doing. Hearing your reloads and shots line up perfectly with the music is also incredibly satisfying, but very dependent on the gun you're using. The revolver, pistol, shotgun and BFG style rocket launcher all sync up perfectly with the music, but the automatic weapons like the SMG didn't quite sit right with me. The bursts of fire felt at odds with the pace of the music, and it actually threw me off several times. In terms of music, the only thing I would have loved to have seen here is varied tempos for the musical choices in each level. All of the tracks in BPM have the same tempo, so once you've got the timing of your shots down to a fine art, there's no variation or deviation from that setup. Personally, I would have loved some even higher tempo songs in the later levels to really challenge my ability to attack to the beat of the music. Graphically, BPM is an exceptionally simplistic looking game. Instead of opting for a highly detailed world populated with hyper-realistic creatures and scenery, it instead coats each world you travel through in a different colour hue. Asgard, for example, is a shade of orange throughout, and the following realm is a tone of green. Enemies, however, do pop out against these less detailed backgrounds with glowing edges and often have a bright orange hue, so you naturally start to look for those colours when lining up your next shot. BPM is by no means an ugly game, but it certainly has a style that I haven't seen before. The entire game almost looks like it's taking place inside the Batman Arkham detective vision, where edges of creatures are highlighted and the world becomes one solid colour. In a market dominated by gritty and realistic looking games of a very similar nature, I can only assume the art style was a stylistic choice to allow BPM to stand out amongst its peers, and for me it succeeded. Ultimately, I would have liked to see a little more detail on the enemy design, but in a game this frantic, you don't wait around long enough to smell the roses anyway, you just shoot everything that's moving. In terms of longevity, BPM gives its players plenty of reason to return time and time again. This is a game that's designed to be played over and over with constantly changing runs, different abilities and unlockable extras to find. When you first load up BPM, only one character is available to you, but upon completing each Norse realm you unlock additional Valkyries with differing starting weapons and abilities. Pushing through the game with these different characters unlocks challenges, achievements and additional perk slots to help you with the game's ominous hard mode. For me, the joy was experimentation. After trying every weapon I could find, I settled on the giant BFG style rocket launcher. With only 3 rounds in its chamber, my shots had to be much more selective, but the high damage output was a great trade-off. Going forward, I will return to BPM to run hard mode, complete challenges, test different loadouts, and generally enjoy the fast-paced, tight gameplay at the centre of the experience. Overall, I've been extremely impressed with BPM. As a fan of roguelike games such as Binding of Isaac and Enter the Gungeon, there is a huge amount here to enjoy. That paired with the solid soundtrack and some frantic Doom-style combat creates a special kind of gameplay loop that hooked me in and will keep me coming back for more as time goes on. If you're a fan of dungeon crawling, roguelike games, first-person shooters or rhythm games with a chunky metal soundtrack, then check out BPM. It's easy to play but hard to master, and I can guarantee you'll be playing those songs over and over in your head for weeks afterwards.